Today we take you to a luxurious cruise ship sailing through the crystal-clear waters of the Caribbean. What started as an adventurous getaway quickly spiraled into a tragic nightmare. For one couple, the fantasies they sought to explore led to a deadly conclusion that left a man dead and a wife on the run. Derek Orville, 45, was a well-known and successful realtor from Mankato, Minnesota, a town more famous for its cornfields and conservative values than for the kind of thrill-seeking that Derek openly craved. Outwardly, Derek was the perfect image of a charismatic, outgoing man who seemed to have it all. His confidence and charm made him a popular figure in his community, and his real estate business was thriving. He was known for his love of adventure and excitement, always the first to suggest a daring activity or exotic vacation. Derek's love for life's thrills, including those of a sexual kind, extended beyond his career and into his personal life, where he sought out experiences that pushed boundaries. This desire for excitement led Derek and his wife Janice to book a trip on an adults-only cruise through the Caribbean in April of 2015. This cruise, marketed as an exotic getaway for couples seeking to spice up their relationships, promised a week of sun, sea, and illicit sex. Derek saw it as the perfect opportunity to explore the more daring side of his sexual interests. Despite his adventurous nature, Derek's life wasn't without its darker sides. Friends described him as someone who could be controlling, particularly in his relationships. This side of Derek had surfaced more often in recent years, straining his marriage to Janice, a quiet and somewhat meek woman. Yet Derek remained determined to revive the spark in their relationship through illicit sexual practices such as swinging and wipe swapping, believing that this cruise could be the answer to his marital problems. In the days leading up to their departure, Derek tried to force Janice to go on the cruise with him, in the belief that this trip would bring them closer together. He painted a picture of excitement and intimacy that he hoped would rekindle their romance. But behind his confident exterior, Derek was unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of his marriage. As the cruise approached, Derek's dreams were filled with visions of adventure and passion. He was ready to dive into the experience, never imagining that it would be the last adventure of his life. On the morning of April 14, 2015, at approximately 9:00 a.m., the housekeeper aboard the luxurious cruise ship made a grisly discovery. Her name was Luisa Palacio Ortiz, a 32-year-old woman from San Juan, Puerto Rico, who had been working on the ship for nearly 5 years. As she went about her usual routine, cleaning the cabins while most passengers were at breakfast, she approached cabin 827, the suite assigned to Derek and Janice Orville. When Luisa knocked on the door and received no answer, she assumed the couple had gone out for the day. Using her master key, she entered the room to begin her cleaning. Almost immediately, Luisa noticed something was wrong. The room was eerily quiet, and a strange, heavy smell lingered in the air. As she stepped further into the cabin, Luisa's eyes were drawn to the bed, where she saw Derek Orville's body. He was naked, lying face down on the bed, the mouth gagged and his hands bound to the bedpost with metal chains. A pillow was pressed tightly over his face, and there were no signs of movement. Shocked, Luisa froze for a moment, trying to process what she was seeing. Her heart raced, and she felt a wave of nausea. But years of working on the ship had taught her to stay calm in emergencies. Quickly, she backed out screaming of the room and ran down the hallway to the nearest phone. She dialed the ship's emergency number and reported what she had found. Within minutes, ship security arrived at the scene, and the area was cordoned off to prevent any passengers from entering. Luisa, visibly shaken, was taken to a private area where she was given water and comforted by a fellow crew member. She later told investigators that she had never seen anything like this before and hoped never to see it again. The discovery of Derek's body sent shockwaves through the ship. Spicy gossip spread quickly among the passengers, who had been enjoying a sunny day at sea, completely unaware of the dark turn the cruise had taken. Many gathered in small groups, whispering about what had happened, as the ship's crew and authorities prepared to handle the unfolding tragedy. Within an hour of the discovery, the ship's captain, Mark Reynolds, had alerted the local authorities at the nearest port, St. Thomas in the U.S. Virgin Islands. By 10:30 a.m. on April 14, 2015, a team of detectives from the Virgin Islands Police Department, led by Detective Samuel Torres, boarded the cruise ship. Torres, a seasoned investigator known for his sharp instincts and methodical approach, was accompanied by a forensic specialist and her assistant. The team moved quickly to secure the crime scene, taking every precaution to ensure that no evidence was contaminated. As Torres entered cabin 827, he was struck by the stark contrast between the luxury of the room and the brutal reality of the crime. The cabin, with its plush bedding, elegant furniture, and ocean views, was immaculately clean. Too clean. The air was heavy with the scent of cleaning products, which suggested that the scene had been deliberately sanitized. Derek Orville's naked body lay undisturbed on the bed, still bound with metal chains and gagged with a ball, a pillow pressed tightly against his nose. There were no signs of a struggle, no blood, and no obvious fingerprints, indicating that the killer had taken great care in covering their tracks. The medical examiner immediately began her examination of the body, noting the ligature marks on Derek's wrists and ankles. The chains were heavy and industrial-looking, not something typically found on a cruise ship, raising suspicions that they had been brought on specifically for this possibly sexual purpose. They also observed that Derek's lips were tinged blue, a clear sign of suffocation. The time of death was estimated to be around 2:00 a.m., based on the body's rigidity and temperature. Meanwhile, Torres meticulously searched the room for any additional clues. They used luminol to check for traces of blood, but the tests came back negative, further supporting the theory that the scene had been carefully cleaned. Torres also ordered a sweep of the cabin for any hair, fibers, or other forensic evidence that might have been overlooked. The detectives were puzzled by the lack of any clear evidence pointing to a suspect. Everything about the scene suggested a premeditated, calculated murder by someone who knew Derek's preferences and tendencies. As the investigation continued, the crew and passengers were questioned. Ship logs were reviewed to identify anyone who might have entered or exited the cabin during the night, but the initial search yielded few leads, leaving the detectives with more questions than answers. The team realized they were dealing with a highly skilled and possibly cold-blooded killer. The first person Detective Samuel Torres focused on was Janice Orville, Derek's wife of 20 years. Janice, 45, was a quiet, unassuming librarian from Mankato, Minnesota. She had always been the opposite of her outgoing husband. Where Derek was adventurous and charismatic, Janice was reserved and meek. Her friends described her as a kind but somewhat timid woman who often felt overpowered by Derek's larger-than-life personality. She had spent most of her life supporting Derek's ambitions, including his desire to sexually experiment with this adults-only cruise. When Torres brought Janice in for questioning on the afternoon of April 14th, she appeared visibly shaken, her hands trembling as she clutched a tissue. Janice was cooperative, but her demeanor was that of a woman who had been pushed to the brink. As she recounted the events of the previous night, her voice was soft, barely above a whisper. She told Torres that Derek had been excited about the cruise, particularly about exploring their sexual relationship in new ways, something that had always made her uncomfortable. Janice admitted that she had reluctantly agreed to participate in Derek's wife-swapping fantasy, hoping it would satisfy her husband's increasingly kinky sexual needs. But as the days went on, Janice, already off-kilter, having never even seen the ocean in her life, became increasingly uneasy with her husband's sexual arrangements. She described feeling trapped by Derek's insatiable appetite for bizarre sexual situations and disgusted by the situations he practically forced her into. The night before Derek's death, the couple had argued in their cabin. Janice told Torres that Derek had demanded her to have sex with Marina Davis-Lockley, one of the other participants in the wife-swapping arrangement, while he watched. Janice had refused, leading to a heated argument. She admitted to feeling both angry and humiliated, but she insisted that she had left the cabin to cool off, spending the night walking around the ship's deck, staring out at the ocean, and praying for strength. Torres pressed Janice on the details of the argument, trying to determine if her anger could have driven her to kill Derek. However, Janice remained calm and composed, showing no signs of the rage that might have led to such a brutal murder. Despite her discomfort with the situation, Janice maintained that she would never have harmed Derek, whom she had loved for so many years. The detectives noted her demeanor, but they couldn't ignore the potential motive, a combination of fear, resentment, and desperation, that made Janice a key suspect. The second suspect in Derek Orville's murder was Brian Davis, a 47-year-old investment banker from Long Island, New York. Brian was everything Derek admired: successful, confident, and charismatic, with a reputation as a ladies' man. He had been married to Marina Davis Lockley, a serene British yoga instructor, for 10 years, but their relationship was anything but traditional. Brian and Marina were in an open marriage, a fact they were open about, particularly during this adults-only cruise. Brian's involvement in the wife-swapping arrangement had started as a thrill-seeking adventure, something he was always up for. Friends described him as a smooth talker who could charm anyone into doing almost anything. On a cruise, Brian quickly bonded with Derek, who shared his enthusiasm for pushing sexual boundaries. The two men seemed to hit it off immediately, and by the third day of the trip, they had agreed to swap wives. But it wasn't just Derek's wife, Janice, who caught Brian's eye. Brian also became attracted to Derek himself, enjoying the power dynamics that Derek liked to impose, and the two regularly heading to the nearest bathroom to have sex with each other. When Detective Samuel Torres brought Brian in for questioning, Brian was dressed in a casual polo shirt and khaki shorts, looking more like someone about to hit the golf course than a murder suspect. He was relaxed, almost too relaxed, as he spoke to Torres. Brian admitted that he and Derek had become close, and had even become sexual partners. However, he denied any involvement in Derek's death. Brian claimed that the last time he saw Derek was the night before, during a tense encounter where Derek had demanded that Brian and Marina engage in a sexual act with Janice while he watched. Brian, who said he, quote, hates conflict, said the situation had become uncomfortable, and he had left the cabin with Marina, returning to their own room for the night. Torres noticed that Brian's calm demeanor never wavered, even when the questioning became more intense. Brian spoke confidently, his answers quick and to the point. He acknowledged that the wife-swapping experience with Janice and Derek had not been what he expected, admitting that the tension between the couples had escalated as the week went on. However, he insisted that while the situation had grown awkward, he had no reason to kill Derek. Brian's alibi, spending the night with Marina in their cabin, was supported by key card records, but Torres couldn't shake the feeling that Brian was hiding something. The motive was clear: jealousy, desire, and a hunger for control. Brian's interest in both Derek and Janice, coupled with the possibility of a love triangle turning deadly, made him a prime suspect. But without solid evidence, Torres knew he needed more to connect Brian directly to the murder. The investigation took a significant turn on April 16, 2015, 2 days after Derek Orville's body was discovered. The morning was overcast, with a light drizzle making the deck of the cruise ship slick. Detective Samuel Torres was growing frustrated. Despite the interrogations and a meticulous search of Derek's cabin, the team still hadn't uncovered any decisive evidence pointing to the killer. The crime scene was clean, and the few witnesses were either too intoxicated or too focused on their own affairs to provide useful information. But that morning, new evidence emerged that changed the direction of the investigation. A maintenance worker named Caloy Mendez, who had been cleaning the ship's storage rooms, found a small, nondescript digital camera tucked away behind some cleaning supplies. The camera looked out of place, and its memory card was missing. Caloy, who had heard about the murder on the ship, immediately turned it over to the ship's security team. They, in turn, passed it on to Torres and his team. The camera was a simple, handheld model, the kind anyone might carry on vacation. It was slightly scuffed, suggesting it had been hastily discarded. Torres hoped the camera might contain some useful information, so he sent it to the forensic lab on board the ship for analysis. Within a few hours, the technicians had managed to recover several deleted files from the camera's internal memory. What they found was shocking. The recovered footage showed several sexual encounters between the two couples involved in the wife-swapping arrangement: Derek and Janice Orville and Brian and Marina Davis. The videos, recorded without Janice's knowledge, revealed the increasing tension and discomfort she felt, particularly during the final night of Derek's life. One of the most disturbing clips showed a heated argument between Derek and Janice in their cabin. Derek, visibly angry, was pressuring Janice to participate in a sexual act with Marina while he watched. Janice was seen crying, pleading with Derek to stop, but he refused. The video cut off abruptly, but it was clear that Janice had been pushed to her emotional limit. This new evidence provided a much clearer picture of what might have happened that night. It also gave Torres a better understanding of Janice's state of mind in the hours leading up to the murder. The footage, combined with her earlier testimony, suggested that Janice's fear and desperation had reached a boiling point, possibly leading to Derek's death. Torres now had the motive he needed, but he still needed to confirm if Janice had actually committed the murder. The third suspect in the investigation was Marina Davis Lockley, a 39-year-old yoga instructor from Stoke-on-Trent, England. Marina was known for her calm demeanor and spiritual outlook on life. She had met her husband, Ryan Davis, 10 years earlier while teaching a yoga class in New York City. Despite their different backgrounds, Marina being quiet and introspective, Brian being outgoing and ambitious, the couple seemed to complement each other. Their open marriage, however, was a source of curiosity and sometimes judgment from those who knew them. Marina had initially been reluctant about the wife-swapping arrangement that Brian and Derek had proposed. She wasn't as adventurous as her husband and felt uncomfortable with the idea, but she agreed to it in an effort to keep their marriage strong. As the cruise progressed, Marina found herself increasingly uneasy with the sexual dynamics between the two couples. Derek's dominant behavior, particularly his insistence on controlling the situation, clashed with Marina's desire for peace and balance. She began to distance herself from their wanton sexual activities, often retreating to the ship's yoga classes or spending time alone on the deck, staring out at the endless Caribbean Sea. Detective Samuel Torres brought Marina in for questioning after the disturbing footage from her camera was found. The videos, however, clearly showed Marina's discomfort during the sexual encounters, and Torres wanted to understand her state of mind. Marina appeared calm, but there was an undercurrent of tension in her eyes. Torres began by asking Marina about her relationship with Derek and Janice. Marina admitted that she felt sympathy for Janice, who seemed overwhelmed by Derek's controlling nature. She also expressed regret for agreeing to the wife-swapping arrangement, acknowledging that it had brought nothing but stress and anxiety. She admitted to the videos, saying that she had secretly recorded all their sexual encounters on the cruise for pragmatic reasons only. She told police she was planning to sell the footage to an adult film company, as she and Brian were in deep financial trouble. When Torres pressed her about the night of Derek's murder, Marina's calm facade began to crack. She admitted that she had left Derek and Janice's cabin early, unable to bear the situation any longer. However, she denied any involvement in Derek's death. Torres noted that Marina's responses were measured but tinged with a quiet resolve. She seemed genuinely saddened by Derek's death, but also relieved that the ordeal was over. Despite her calm exterior, Torres couldn't help but wonder if Marina's desire to protect Janice had driven her to an extreme action. The possibility that Marina had acted out of a protective instinct, combined with her own discomfort, made her a serious suspect. However, without concrete evidence linking her directly to the crime, Torres knew he would have to dig deeper to find the truth. Hey true crime solvers, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. And do you have any thoughts about this case? Or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Stay safe, true crime. The Unreveal Stories. The breakthrough in the investigation came on April 18, 2015, 4 days after Derek Orville's body was found. Detective Samuel Torres had spent days reviewing the footage recovered from the hidden camera, piecing together the events leading up to Derek's murder. The evidence pointed to only one person who had the motive, opportunity, and means to carry out the crime: Janice Orville, Derek's wife. Janice, a 45-year-old librarian from Mankato, Minnesota, had been a quiet, supportive partner throughout their 20-year marriage. But the cruise had exposed the deep cracks in their relationship. Derek's domineering behavior and insistence on pushing Janice into increasingly uncomfortable sexual situations had taken a toll on her. The The footage from the camera revealed Janice's growing distress, particularly during the final night of Derek's life. The video showed Derek demanding that Janice participate in a sexual act with Marina Davis while he watched, bound and gagged. Janice's tearful pleas for Derek to stop went unanswered, and the video cut off just as tensions reached a boiling point. Torres was convinced that Janice had snapped under the pressure, leading her to suffocate Derek with a pillow while he was helpless. On the morning of April 18th, Torres, along with 2 other officers, went to confront Janice in her cabin. The sun was just rising, casting a soft glow over the ship as it continued its journey through the Caribbean. Janice opened the door, her face pale and eyes red from days of sleeplessness. She knew why they were there. Torres informed Janice that she was under arrest for the murder of her husband. Janice didn't resist. Instead, she simply nodded, her hands trembling as she was handcuffed. She seemed resigned to her fate, as if the weight of the past week had finally crushed her spirit. As she was led away, other passengers watched in shocked silence, the reality of the situation sinking in. Back in Mankato, news of Janice's arrest spread quickly. The small town, where Derek had been a well-known realtor, was stunned. Friends and family struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet, unassuming librarian with the shocking crime she was accused of committing. Derek's parents were devastated. They had always seen Janice as the perfect wife for their son, and now they were grappling with the horror that she had taken his life. The arrest marked the beginning of a long legal process, but for Torres, it was the culmination of a tense and emotionally charged investigation. He had seen the toll the situation had taken on everyone involved, and while Janice's arrest brought some closure, it also left many questions about the true nature of the relationship between Derek and Janice, and how it had all gone so terribly wrong. Janice Orville's trial began on October 12, 2015, in Miami-Dade County Court. The courtroom was packed with reporters, curious onlookers, and the families of both Derek and Janice, all eager to see justice served. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Maria Paulina Sanchez, 38, was determined to paint Janice as a cold-blooded killer. Sanchez, known for her no-nonsense approach and sharp cross-examinations, argued that Janice had meticulously planned Derek's murder as a way to escape their failing marriage. She presented the hidden camera footage as key evidence, highlighting Janice's growing distress and the final confrontation on the night of the murder. Sanchez asserted that Janice had deliberately suffocated Derek, using the pillow as the murder weapon, in a premeditated act of violence. The defense, led by public defender Alan Goldstein, 52, painted a very different picture. Goldstein, a seasoned attorney known for his empathetic style, argued that Janice had acted in self-defense after years of psychological abuse. He described Derek as a controlling and manipulative husband who had forced Janice into humiliating situations. Goldstein claimed that Janice's actions were the result of a mental breakdown brought on by the extreme stress of the cruise and Derek's relentless pressure. Throughout the trial, Janice remained stoic, her eyes often downcast as she listened to the testimony. The Orville family sat in the front row, their grief palpable. Derek's mother, Linda Orville, broke down in tears several times, unable to comprehend how the woman she once considered a daughter could have killed her son. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning with a verdict. On October 27, 2015, Janice Orville was found guilty of second-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to 50 years in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some closure to Derek's family, but it also left them with a deep sense of loss. They felt the sentence was too lenient, given the brutal nature of Derek's death. Janice's family, on the other hand, expressed relief that she had not been sentenced to life in prison, though they were devastated by the outcome. The trial had been a painful experience for everyone involved, leaving scars that would take years to heal. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were irrevocably changed. Janice Orville began serving her 50-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution, a women's prison in Ocala, Florida. Life behind bars was a harsh adjustment for Janice, who had spent most of her life in the quiet comfort of her Minnesota home. The once motsy librarian now faced a daily reality filled with strict routines, overcrowded cells, and limited contact with the outside world. She kept mostly to herself, spending her days reading and occasionally teaching other inmates how to read and write. Back in Mankato, Derek Orville's family struggled to move forward. His parents, Robert and Linda, were consumed by grief, unable to accept the loss of their only son. The house that once echoed with Derek's lively presence now felt unbearably empty. Robert, who had always been proud of Derek's achievements, became a shell of his former self, rarely leaving the house. Linda sought solace in her church community, finding comfort in prayer and the support of fellow parishioners. But the pain of losing Derek remained a constant companion. Ryan Davis and Marina Davis-Lockley, the other couple involved in the wipe-swapping arrangement, returned to Long Island after the trial. The scandal had destroyed their reputation and left their marriage in tatters. Ryan, once a successful investment banker, lost his job after the company learned about the trial and the secret recordings he had made. Marina, who had been a respected yoga instructor, found it impossible to continue teaching, as her clients abandoned her in the wake of the scandal. The couple eventually divorced, each trying to rebuild their lives separately. For the community of Mankato, the case served as a harsh reminder of how quickly life can change. The trial and its aftermath were the talk of the town for months, as people struggled to reconcile the Janice they knew with the woman convicted of such a horrific crime. Thank you for joining us on this episode of True Crime. The Unreveal Stories. Stay tuned for more stories that delve into the darkest corners of human nature.